Tom Sanders was in cosmic trouble, trouble of the star-shattering kind. He was sprawled atop Voryntha, the majestic sovereign of the Kryon Dominion, aboard the dazzling Starlight Serenade, a luxury interstellar cruise ship. It was a mortifying and life-threatening position. His waiter's uniform, a billowing silver tunic mandated by the ship's elite dining service, was tangled around his thighs, and his ahem, protruding part, that most private excess of anatomy, was lodged where it had no business being. Absolutely not where it should be. The ship's grand ballroom, now Voryntha's makeshift throne room, was immense, with glowing orbs casting a dreamy violet glow. Aliens of all sorts, tentacled, feathered, or blob-like, packed the tiered seats, muttering and pointing. Their stares were venomous. Voryntha, beneath him, was a mesmerizing terror, her skin a radiant purple that shimmered like liquid amethyst, her eyes twin emerald nebulae, her form ethereal, more a living galaxy than humanoid. She exuded power, and right now, unbridled fury. Extract that protrusion. Voryntha's voice thundered, rattling the crystal chandeliers. Tom's bones hummed. This instant, you miserable mote. Tom swallowed hard, his mouth dry as a desert moon. Yes, your radiance right away, but swear I'll walk away unscathed. Please, nothing cut. His voice wobbled. He was petrified. A sleek, multi-limbed alien, draped in robes so ornate they seemed to shimmer with their own ego, slithered forward. Zorro, Voryntha's chief advisor. His face was a portrait of disdain, as if Tom's mere existence offended the laws of physics. You've profaned the sovereign, he spat, his voice dripping with venom. You've dared to thrust your Vyrn-part, that grotesque, protruding excess, into her sacred nexus. The term Vyrn-part landed like a meteor, echoing ominously in a vast ballroom. That obscene protrusion will be excised, human. It's our sacred law, etched in the starstones of Kryon. A glacial chill seized Tom's spine. Excised? As in snip snip? No, no, no. Hold it right there, he yelped, his voice cracking like a teenager's. This was a total accident. I swear on every moon in the galaxy. I didn't aim to stick anything anywhere. I tripped. I fell. This whole trial is ludicrous. He was practically shouting now, his face a shade of red that could guide ships through a nebula. I'll pull out. I'm dying to, but I need a rock-solid guarantee you won't go chopping off my protrusion. Voryntha's emerald eyes, glowing like twin supernovas, bored into him, peeling back his soul layer by sweaty layer. The silence was suffocating, broken only by Tom's ragged panting and the crowd's whispers, which sounded like a swarm of cosmic bees gossiping about his doom. The sovereign was notorious for her temper, a volcanic force that could melt asteroids. Her edicts were the stuff of nightmares. Rumor had it she once banished an ambassador for serving her tea at the wrong temperature. No one could guess her next move. At last, she spoke, her voice softer but sharp enough to cut through a hull. Explain, human. You have one chance. Convince me I shouldn't reduce you to cosmic dust. Zorro bristled, his limbs twitching like an over-caffeinated octopus. Your radiance, this is an outrage, he squawked, his robes puffing up as if to match his indignation. This vermin deserves only punishment, not a platform to spew his filth. Quiet, Zorro. Voryntha snapped, her tone like a whip. The advisor deflated, his limbs curling inward as he slunk back, muttering about standards of decency. Voryntha's gaze locked on at Tom, unyielding. Speak, human, and make it swift. I'll let Zorro have his way with the laser shears. Tom took a shaky breath, his brain scrambling like a malfunctioning droid in his utterly compromising position. Thinking clearly while perched atop a furious alien queen was like trying to solve calculus during a meteor shower. Well, your radiance, he began, his voice wobbling, in my species, guys, human males, that is, sometimes wake up in the morning with the Vyrn-part all prominent. His face burned hotter than a star's core, and he wished he could teleport to a black hole. The crowd tittered, snickers, chortles, and what sounded like a wheezing gurgle from a blob-like alien in the back. Prominent? Voryntha asked, her delicate brow arching like the curve of a comet's tail, a faint glimmer of curiosity in her eyes. Yet Tom mumbled, utterly wretched. It gets stiff, sticks out like a spare antenna nobody asked for. It's natural, totally out of our control. Happens at dawn, like clockwork, whether we like it or not. The crowd erupted in a mix of gasps and stifled laughter. A tentacled alien waved its appendages in what might have been scandalized delight, while a feathered creature squawked something that sounded suspiciously like barbaric. Zoril snorted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Preposterous. A biological defect so chaotic? Your species must be a walking disaster. Tom ignored him, though it took every ounce of willpower not to roll his eyes. Look, it's not a defect, it's just a thing. Anyway, this morning I overslept big time. I had to hustle to serve breakfast on this fancy ship, right? So I bolted out of my cabin, still half in dreamland, my brain basically running on emergency power. He paused, gathering the nerve to continue, his hands gesturing wildly as if they could dig him out of this mess. And, I didn't fasten the tunic right. Like at all. The crowd buzzed louder, their amusement palpable. A gelatinous alien quivered, sending ripples through its form that might have been laughter. Zoril cut in again, his voice booming with righteous fury. You expect us to believe you're so utterly incompetent you cannot manage a basic service tunic? A garment designed for elegance and function? His limbs flailed, nearly knocking over a hovering orb. This is an insult to the very concept of civilization. Tom's patience snapped. On Earth, men don't wear tunics, okay? He exploded, exasperation pouring out. We wear pants, separate legs, snug, practical. Not these flowing, floor-dragging, trip-hazard nightmares. I'm not built for this. Back home, I'd be in jeans, not some cosmic toga that's basically a trap for clumsy humans. The notion of pants sent the crowd into a frenzy of giggles. A feathered alien flapped its wings, cackling, while another whispered loudly to its neighbor. Pants? What primitive nonsense! Voryntha's lips twitched, and Tom could have sworn he saw the faintest smirk, though her emerald eyes remained piercing. Proceed, she ordered, her voice betraying a hint of amusement, like a star flickering before it goes supernova. Tom swallowed, praying he wasn't imagining her softening mood. Right, so, he continued, I was dashing down the corridor, groggy as a hibernating space bear, with the Vyrn-part, jutting out like it's got a mind of its own. I was carrying your breakfast tray, your radiance, fancy stuff, crystal goblets, glowing fruit, the works, and then I tripped on the tunic's hem. Like full-on faceplant mode. Lost my balance. The tray went flying, the tunic slid down on my knees, and I landed, here. He nodded awkwardly at their entangled predicament, his face now a shade of crimson that could signal distress to passing ships. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of shock and barely contained mirth. A tentacled alien scribbled furiously on a holographic tablet, possibly live-streaming the fiasco to the Galactic net. Zoril, undeterred, leaned forward, his eyes glinting with malicious glee. If human males are so woefully clumsy with tunics and cursed with this morning prominence of the Vyrn-part, then surely accidental insertions are a daily occurrence on your backward planet. His tone suggested he'd just cracked the case of the century. Tom shook his head so hard he nearly toppled over. No, not really. It's not like we're stumbling into situations like this every morning. Then, in a moment of reckless honesty, he added, I mean, not as often as some dudes might wish, I guess. In their wildest dreams, maybe after a few too many space beers. Dead silence. The aliens stared, baffled, their multifaceted eyes and glowing antennae twitching in confusion. The joke sailed over their heads like a rogue asteroid. A blob alien gurgled, possibly offended, while another muttered, Space beers? Is that a ritual? Voryntha tilted her head, her expression unreadable but her eyes glinting with something new. Intrigue, perhaps? And why? she asked, her voice smooth as a pulsar's hum. Are such mishaps not commonplace on your world? If your biology is so unpredictable? Tom seized the chance to steer the conversation to safer ground, feeling a flicker of confidence on familiar turf. Okay, look, on Earth, we've got this whole system, right? We eat breakfast fully dressed. Pants, shirts, socks, the whole deal. Women wear whatever they want, dresses, pants, doesn't matter, but it's all like covered. He hesitated, knowing this next bit would sound bizarre. And the standard breakfast posture? It's not, flashing sacred nexuses at everyone. Nobody's waving their private bits around while chowing down on pancakes. In fact, he added, leaning into the absurdity, it's considered super rude to eat while showing off that part to other people. Like you get kicked out of the diner, maybe banned for life, and definitely roasted on the internet. The crowd fell silent, utterly perplexed. Dress for meals? No nexus exposure? A tentacled alien whispered to its neighbor. Pancakes? Are those a sacred relic? Another shook its head, muttering about repressed primates. Zoril scoffed, his limbs quivering with indignation. Your planet sounds like a cultural wasteland. Eating without displaying the nexus? What kind of joyless, stifled existence is that? Tom bit back a retort, focusing on Voryntha, whose lips were definitely curving now, her smirk more pronounced. Was she entertained? So, Tom wrapped up, his voice a mix of desperation and defiance. That's the deal. I overslept. I fumbled the tunic. I tripped like a rookie on rocket skates, and now I'm here, stuck in the worst misunderstanding of my life. Your guards nabbed me, dragged me to this cosmic kangaroo court, and all I want is to get out of this without losing anything important. He shot Voryntha a pleading look, his eyes practically screaming mercy. Please, your radiance, don't let them cut off my Vyrn-part. It's got sentimental value, Voryntha studied him for a long moment, her emerald gaze as unreadable as an encrypted star map. The crowd held its breath, antennae twitching, feathers rustling. Finally, she turned to her counsel, her voice cool but laced with a trace of amusement. Deliberate. Zoril's jaw dropped, his limbs flopping in disbelief. But he shuffled to join the advisors, who began murmuring in their melodic tongue, consulting glowing holographic screens. Tom waited, heart pounding, praying his bumbling explanation had bought him a stay of execution. Zoril and the advisors huddled like a flock of cosmic bureaucrats, their lilting tongues weaving a symphony of murmurs that sounded like a choir of disgruntled space crickets. They poked at holographic screens, their glowing charts and graphs flickering with what Tom could only assume were blueprints for his impending doom. The tension was thicker than a neutron star, and Tom's imagination ran wild. Razor-sharp blades, sizzling lasers, or maybe just a quick zap into oblivion. His heart thumped so loud he swore it echoed off the ballroom's crystal chandeliers. Finally, Zoril spun around, his multi-limbed form practically oozing smugness, his face a smug supernova of triumph. We've decided, your radiance, he declared, his voice dripping with self-righteous glee. Unanimous. The human must extract the Vyrn-part, that vile, protruding abomination, immediately. Failure means instant execution, as decreed by the sacred codex of Kryon. Tom's heart didn't just plummet. It crash-landed into a pit of cosmic despair. No immunity, no promises, just a brutal ultimatum. Yank it out or kiss existence goodbye. The choice was grim, but painfully clear. He glanced at Voryntha, her purple skin shimmering like a galaxy of amethysts, her emerald eyes cold as a comet's core. She nodded, her expression as unyielding as a black hole's pull. Tom squeezed his eyes shut, braced for the worst, and began to withdraw the Vyrn-part, moving slower than a rusty droid, expecting a scream, a blast, or maybe just spontaneous combustion. But then hold. Voryntha's voice sliced through the silence, soft as a pulsar's whisper but hard as star-forged steel. Tom froze mid-motion, his eyes snapping open so fast he nearly sprained an eyelid. Her expression had shifted. Gone was the fury that could melt planets, replaced by a glint of curiosity, maybe even fascination. her delicate brow furrowed, not in anger but in deep, almost scientific focus, like she was studying a newly discovered species. "That friction," she said slowly, her voice a velvet hum that sent a shiver down Tom's already rattled spine. "As you pulled back, it sparked a most peculiar sensation." She locked eyes with him, her emerald gaze now twinkling like a nebula caught in a sunbeam. "Put it back." Tom blinked, his brain short-circuiting. Put it back? Was she serious? Had the sovereign of the Kryon Dominion just asked him to reinsert his protruding Vyrn-part? He gaped, his mouth opening and closing like a stranded space fish, certain he'd misheard or maybe slipped into a fever dream. Zoro lurched forward, his limbs flailing like a panicked squid, his robes billowing as if trying to escape the room. "Your radiance, this is unthinkable," he wailed, his voice hitting a pitch that could shatter asteroids. This creature has defiled your sacred nexus. To entertain such an act is to spit on the stars themselves." "Silence, Zoro," Voryntha hissed, her gaze never leaving Tom, her tone a deadly blend of silk and venom. The advisor recoiled as if slapped, his limbs curling into a sulky knot, muttering about cosmic propriety under his breath. The court, already on edge, went quieter than a black hole's event horizon, their multifaceted eyes and twitching antennae fixed on their sovereign. Tom's mind was a whirlwind of panic and disbelief, death by execution, or whatever this was. Your radiance," he stammered, his voice barely a squeak. "You sure about this? I mean, I'm not questioning your, radiance, but this is weird, right?" Voryntha's lips curved ever so slightly, a smirk that could launch 1,000 starships. "Do as I command, human." Now, her voice was a velvet command, and Tom, with death looming like a supernova, had no choice. Hands shaking like a malfunctioning warp drive, he complied, reinserting the Vyrn-part with the caution of someone defusing a photon bomb. Voryntha's expression softened, her emerald eyes half closing, a faint, almost melodic sigh escaping her lips like the hum of a distant star. The court gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the air from the room. A tentacled alien dropped its holographic tablet, which clattered loudly in the silence. "Now," Voryntha ordered, her voice low and deliberate, "pull out." Tom, his brain now a puddle of cosmic goo, obeyed, withdrawing slowly, his face a mask of pure bewilderment. "In," she commanded, her eyes glinting with something dangerously close to delight. He inserted, his movements robotic, his thoughts screaming, "What is my life right now?" Out. He withdrew. In. He inserted. A rhythm emerged, slow at first, like a cautious waltz in zero gravity, then quicker, like a spaceship dodging asteroids. In, out, in, out. Tom's mind blanked, reduced to a single, looping thought. I'm following orders from an alien queen, and this is definitely not in the waiter's handbook. Voryntha, the dread sovereign, the galactic scourge whose name struck fear into entire star systems, issued her commands with the precision of a fleet commander, and Tom obeyed mechanically, caught in the most surreal, galaxy-defying moment of his existence. The court was beyond stunned, silent as the void, their jaws, or equivalent orifices, hanging open. They watched their sovereign, Wrath's avatar, Star of Ruin, the queen who once vaporized a moon for a slight scheduling error. Asterisk relishing asterisk this. Her taut, ethereal form relaxed, her purple skin shimmering brighter, her emerald eyes glowing with a warmth that seemed to defy the laws of physics. A feathered alien fainted, its wings flopping dramatically, while a blob-like creature quivered so violently it nearly dissolved into a puddle. Another alien, clutching a glowing orb, whispered frantically to its neighbor, "Is this allowed? Should we be recording this for the archives?" Zoro, his smugness replaced by a look of existential horror, clutched his robes as if they could shield him from the scandal. "This is blasphemy," he muttered, barely audible, his limbs trembling like overcooked noodles. The pace accelerated, in, out, Voryntha's voice growing urgent, her sighs now a soft, rhythmic melody that sent ripples through the crowd. Tom, sweating buckets, felt like a marionette in a cosmic puppet show, his only goal to avoid screwing up whatever this was. Don't faint, he chanted internally, wondering if he'd ever recover from this intergalactic embarrassment. Then, something utterly miraculous unfolded. A radiant glow burst from Voryntha's purple skin, not the cold violet of the ballroom's orbs, but a warm, golden light laced with sapphire threads, like a nebula birthing a new star. The chandeliers thrummed fiercely, their crystals vibrating with a low, resonant hum that tickled Tom's bones. The air crackled with energy, smelling of ozone and alien blossoms, as the light swelled, wrapping Tom and Voryntha in a shimmering cocoon that pulsed with cosmic power. The court erupted in chaos, gasps, shrieks, and a few panicked gurgles. A tentacled alien fell to its knees, babbling about the prophecy of the Nexus glow, while another frantically live-streamed the event to the Galactic net, its commentary a mix of awe and confusion. Is this a ritual? A Tuesday? Some shielded their eyes. Others stared, transfixed, as the glow intensified, bathing the ballroom in a kaleidoscope of colors. Zoril's smugness dissolved into pure, unadulterated disbelief, his limbs sagging as he muttered, This cannot be." The light pulsed once, twice, then erupted outward in a gentle wave, washing over the crowd like a cosmic breeze before vanishing as swiftly as it began. Silence descended, heavy and absolute, broken only by the faint clink of a dropped orb rolling across the floor. Tom blinked, his vision swimming with afterimages, his heart pounding like a warp engine on overdrive. He was still atop Voryntha, the air now thick with the sweet scent of alien flora, his mind struggling to process the fact that he hadn't been vaporized. The court stared, their expressions a mix of reverence, horror, and morbid curiosity, as if they'd just witnessed the birth of a new galaxy, or the end of their careers. Tom blinked, his eyes stinging from the dazzling afterglow of Voryntha's cosmic light show, his brain still reeling like a spaceship caught in a wormhole spin cycle. He was still perched atop the Sovereign, his Vyrn-part mercifully unvaporized, but the world felt like it had flipped upside down. The air was thick with the sweet, heady scent of alien blossoms, as if the ballroom had been teleported to a galactic flower market. And Voryntha, the terror of the Kryon Dominion, the queen who could make stars tremble with a glance, was smiling. Not a sneer, not a smirk, but a broad, genuine, downright blissful smile that lit up her purple skin like a supernova wrapped in amethyst. Her emerald eyes sparkled with a satisfaction so palpable it could have powered a fleet. She looked radiant, at peace, like she'd just discovered the secret to eternal cosmic harmony. The court couldn't wrap their tentacles, feathers, or gelatinous blobs around it. The Sovereign, joyful? It was a cosmic anomaly, a glitch in the universe's programming. A tentacled alien whispered to its neighbor, "Is this allowed? Should we applaud or run?" Another, clutching a glowing orb, simply gurgled in disbelief. Voryntha's smile widened as she gazed at Tom, her eyes glinting like twin nebulae throwing a private party. "You," she said, her voice a melodic hum, so smooth it could have convinced a comet to change course. She pointed a graceful, jeweled finger at him, the gesture somehow both regal and playfully accusing. "You have a new purpose, human." Tom's brain, already running on fumes, stalled completely. A purpose? Him? The guy who just turned a breakfast delivery into an intergalactic incident? Your radiance," he croaked, his voice sounding like a droid with a bad circuit. "Come again." Voryntha sat up slightly, forcing Tom to scramble awkwardly to maintain his balance, his tunic flapping like a distress flag. "Yes," she affirmed, her tone rich with amusement, her smile turning sly enough to make a black hole blush. "You will serve my morning meal. Every day." She paused, her eyes flickering with a mischievous spark. "Exactly like this, leveraging your prominent morning state." Her voice lingered on the last words, dripping with a honeyed innuendo that made Tom's face burn hotter than a star's core. Tom's jaw dropped so far it nearly hit the floor, his mind a chaotic swirl of asterisk what? How? Why me? Asterisk from death row to personal breakfast server. With that job description, he gaped at her, half expecting a hidden camera crew to pop out and yell, "Gotcha!" The court, still reeling, let out a collective gasp, followed by a flurry of whispers. A feathered alien flapped its wings in excitement, while a blob creature quivered, muttering, "Morning steak? Is that a human delicacy?" Tom stammered, his voice a mix of panic and disbelief. "Me, your radiance? Serve breakfast like this every single day? Like, same setup, same, protrusion action?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them, and the court erupted in stifled snickers, a tentacled alien choking on its own appendages in glee. Voryntha's laugh was a soft, melodic chime, like wind chimes on a distant planet. "Precisely human," she purred, her tone almost too sweet, like a dessert that might give you cosmic cavities. "So, do you accept? Your new role, Royal Morning Attendant. It's not an offer made lightly." Her eyes locked onto his, daring him to say no. Tom's brain was a mess, throwing up error messages like a crashed Starship console. This was overwhelming, bizarre, and probably the weirdest job offer in Galactic history. I need a sec to process this, your radiance," he managed, rubbing the back of his neck, his tunic still bunched up like a cosmic laundry disaster. "Can I maybe have a day to think it over? Weigh my options, check my horoscope, make sure I'm not hallucinating." The court gasped again, shocked at his audacity, but Voryntha's smile didn't waver. If anything, it grew, her eyes twinkling with what might have been delight, or a predator sizing up its prey. "Very well," she replied, her voice a velvet command. "Tomorrow morning, I expect your answer, and, ideally, your human breakfast served with enthusiasm." The last word landed like a playful jab, and the court tittered, a feathered alien fanning itself as if it might swoon. That night, Tom sat in his cramped crew quarters, still processing the day's insanity, when a knock, or rather, a slithering tap, came at his door. He opened it to find Zoro, the multi-limbed advisor who'd been ready to carve him up like a space turkey just hours ago. But the arrogance was gone, replaced by a look of sheer desperation that made his limbs droop like wilted cosmic vines. "Human Tom Sanders," Zoro began, his voice a hushed, almost conspiratorial whisper, as if the walls might snitch to Voryntha. "You must accept this role. I beg you." Tom stared, floored, his jaw threatening to hit the floor again. The guy who'd called for his Vyrn-part to be excised was begging? "Hold up," Tom said, crossing his arms. "You were all about the laser shears earlier, and now you're my biggest fan? What's the deal?" Zoro glanced around nervously, his limbs twitching like a paranoid octopus, then leaned in, his voice dropping to a frantic hiss. "The Sovereign was difficult," he confessed, his eyes darting as if Voryntha might materialize and smite him. Always enraged, screaming at the slightest misstep, handing out punishments like they were party favors. She once banished a chef for serving her nebula juice at 0.02 degrees too warm. Court life was a waking nightmare, human. He shuddered, his robes quivering. "But since your breakfast incident, she's transformed. Radiant, calm, kind." She approved 3 budgets today without vaporizing a single soul. 3. That's a record in Kryon history. The court members loitering nearby nodded fervently, their antennae bobbing, their feathers rustling in agreement. A blob alien gurgled, "I got a raise today," while a tentacled one added, "She complimented my report. I'm framing it." Zoro's eyes met Tom's with raw, almost pitiful honesty. "We're relieved, human. We owe you. The Dominion owes you. Accept this role for the sake of our sanity and our necks." He clasped 2 of his limbs together, practically groveling, his voice cracking. "Please, don't make us go back to the screaming." Tom stared, his brain still catching up. This was surreal, Zorro, the pompous advisor, begging like a kid asking for extra dessert. He scratched his head, his mind spinning. So, let me get this straight, he said slowly. You want me to keep, serving breakfast with my Vyrn-part and all because it makes Irradiance happy? And that's good for the whole Dominion. Zorro nodded, so vigorously his limbs nearly tangled. Yes, it's your cosmic duty, human. Tom sighed, leaning against the doorframe, his tunic still slightly askew from the day's chaos. All right, he said, his voice heavy with resignation but tinged with a reluctant grin. If it's for the Dominion, and it really keeps her radiance from going full supernova, I'll take the job. But I'm going to need a better tunic, one that doesn't try to kill me. Zorro's limbs sagged in relief, and the nearby court members let out a cheer, a feathered alien tossing confetti made of glowing stardust. You're a hero, human, one shouted, while another started chanting, breakfast, breakfast. Tom shook his head, muttering, this is the weirdest career pivot ever. The next morning, Tom stood in the ballroom, now decked out in a slightly less treacherous tunic, facing Voryntha in the court. His stomach churned, but he squared his shoulders and announced, Your Radiance, I accept the role of royal mourning attendant. The ballroom exhaled in a collective sigh of relief, so loud it nearly rattled the chandeliers. Voryntha clapped delicately, her smile as radiant as a sunrise on a crystal planet. Splendid, she purred, her eyes glinting with that same mischievous spark. Zorro, ensure our human gets the finest quarters, something befitting his unique talents. Zorro nodded, so eagerly he nearly tripped over his own limbs, scurrying off to obey. The court broke into applause, a blob alien sobbing with joy, while Tom stood there, wondering if he'd just signed up for the strangest gig in the galaxy, or the best. And so, Tom Sanders, former Earth waiter and accidental cosmic hero, embarked on the strangest career pivot in galactic history. Each morning, he dragged himself out of his plush new quarters, complete with a bed that hummed lullabies in binary, checked that his Vyrn-part was, ahem, primed for duty, and slipped into a slightly less treacherous silver tunic that still felt like wearing a parachute in a windstorm. He'd shuffle to Voryntha's private suite, his stomach doing flips like a spaceship in a meteor shower, and there she'd be, the sovereign of the Kryon Dominion, lounging on a throne of glowing crystals, her purple skin shimmering like a nebulous dream. She'd greet him with an expectant smile, her emerald eyes twinkling with a mix of regal authority and downright mischief, as if she knew exactly how absurd this all was. Good morning, my star attendant, she'd purr, her voice smoother than a comet's tail. Tom would mumble something incoherent, perform his unique breakfast service, and leave Voryntha in a stellar mood that radiated through the Starlight Serenade like a cosmic sunrise. The court thrived under her newfound calm. Fair laws were passed, trade disputes settled, and the ship's artificial skies glowed brighter, as if the universe itself was giving a thumbs up. Weeks passed in a bizarre harmony, and Tom started to think, asterisk, maybe I'm getting the hang of this. Maybe I'm the galaxy's weirdest MVP, asterisk. But fame, as Tom was about to learn, spreads faster than a warp speed rumor. One glittering morning, as he sipped a cup of glowing nebula juice in the ship's lounge, a towering alien approached, his iridescent wings shimmering like a peacock's tail dipped in starlight. He was clad in sapphire silks, so extravagant they probably cost more than Tom's home planet. This was Count Valus, a noble from a distant sector, and he was requesting an audience, not with Voryntha, but with Tom, in a side lounge decked out with floating orbs and cushions that hummed softly. Tom met him, puzzled, his tunic slightly askew from a morning tussle with a rogue hem. Count Valus, right? How can I help you? He asked, trying to sound professional despite feeling like a fish in a spaceship. Valus bowed deeply, his wings brushing the floor, an odd gesture that made Tom flinch, half expecting a trap. Human Tom Sanders, Valus began, his voice trembling with nerves, I've traveled across 3 star systems. Tales of your morning prowess have reached my sector. He fidgeted, his wings twitching like they wanted to bolt. I seek your services. Tom stiffened, his nebula juice nearly spilling. Oh no, not this. Look, Count, no disrespect, but I gotta be clear, I only serve females, he said, scratching his neck, his face flushing redder than a Martian sunset. It's, my work policy, you know? No offense, just keeping things specific. Velus's wings flapped in a frantic blur, his eyes widening in horror. No, no, by the 7 moons, not for me. He yelped, his silks swishing as he waved his arms like a distressed traffic controller. For my wife, Countess Velus. Tom exhaled, his shoulders slumping in relief. Your wife? Okay, phew, that's different. Lay it on me. Velus leaned in, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper, as if sharing a state secret. Her temper is legendary, human. She's always angry, yelling at staff, feuding with neighboring systems, once threw a crystal goblet at a diplomat for mispronouncing her title. It's exhausting, like living in a supernova's blast zone. His wings drooped, his eyes glistening with desperation. But your breakfast miracles are the talk of the galaxy. They say your method banishes bad moods like stardust scattering shadows. Please, could you serve my wife? Name your price, credits, starships, a moon, anything. Tom blinked, his brain doing cartwheels. A side gig? He was barely keeping up with Voryntha's breakfasts. And now he was getting headhunted like some cosmic gig worker? Well, that's flattering, Count, but I need to clear it with Voryntha. She's my main employer, and, she's got dibs on the morning state. Velus nodded so vigorously his wings nearly knocked over a hovering orb. Of course, of course. Let us ask her at once. They found Voryntha in her glowing atrium, humming a tune that made the singing vines around her sway in harmony, her purple skin sparkling like a galaxy in a bottle. She listened to Velus's plea with a raised brow, her lips curling into an amused smirk that could have charmed a black hole. A chronic temper, you say? She mused, twirling a vine around her jeweled finger. How draining. If my star attendant can soothe another's storms, she paused theatrically, her eyes flicking to Tom with a playful glint. Of course he may. His talents are too potent to be confined to one court. Velus nearly collapsed in gratitude, his wings fluttering like a fan on overdrive. Thank you, your radiance, he gasped, bowing so low his forehead grazed the floor. Voryntha raised a jeweled finger, her smile sharpening. But, she added, her voice dripping with mock sternness, I am always first. My breakfast takes priority, understood? Tom nodded, swallowing hard, while Velus babbled assurances like a malfunctioning droid. Absolutely, your radiance. First, always first. The court, eavesdropping from the atrium's edges, buzzed with excitement, a tentacled alien whispering, the humans going freelance, while a feathered one scribbled notes, muttering about galactic service trends. The next day, after serving Voryntha, whose post-breakfast glow could have powered a small planet, Tom was escorted to Velus's lavish suite, where Countess Velus awaited. She was a towering figure, her scales glinting like molten gold, her eyes blazing with a fury that made the room feel like a pressure cooker. You're the human? She snarled, her voice a low growl that rattled the crystal decor. Fix my mood. I'll have you cleaning plasma conduits for a century. Tom gulped, his Vyrn-part suddenly feeling less confident, but he steeled himself, thinking, asterisk, you've got this, Sanders. It's just another breakfast. Asterisk, he applied his proven method, navigating the Countess's supernova-level glare with the focus of a pilot dodging asteroids. The process was intense, to say the least, but the result was nothing short of spectacular. That afternoon, the Countess swept into the ballroom, not yelling but humming, a cheerful melodic tune that stunned the crew into silence. She complimented a waiter's tray arrangement, praised the ship's decor, and even tossed a glowing orb to a blob alien just because. Velus trailed her, teary-eyed with joy, his wings practically glowing with relief. You're a miracle, human, he sobbed, clasping Tom's hands. Name your reward. A fleet, a planet, my finest silks. Tom, still reeling, mumbled, maybe just a coffee maker? The court erupted in cheers, a feathered alien shouting. The humans a mood wizard, while another started to chant, Tom, Tom, Tom. Word spread like a comet's tail. Tom's method worked beyond Voryntha. It cured chronic grumpiness. The ship swarmed with visitors. Nobles, merchants, admirals, all male, all begging. Please, Tom, serve my wife. My spouse hasn't smiled since our honeymoon in the nebula wastes. I'll trade a star freighter for a week of your services. Tom enjoyed it. Weird, yes, but rewarding to see sour faces turn radiant. Plus, the gifts and payments were astronomical. He had a private deck on the ship, but there was a hitch, logistics and biology. It was exhausting. Some mornings, he had a dozen breakfasts to serve before noon. His Vyrn-part, though reliable, wasn't infinite. He needed rest. He needed help. And so, from the heart of the Kryon Dominion, a call goes out. Are you a human male, waking up with a prominent Vyrn-part ready for action? Seeking a career change? Want to cruise the stars with stellar perks? The Dominion needs you. Voryntha's court needs you. Tom Sanders needs you. Apply in the comments. Must be operational at dawn. Limited spots. Join the Human Breakfast Corps today.